So how's the
You need a
partner?
haircut,
How's the
mate.
wife? I do a little bit. Sometimes I'll just throw it out there because I do enjoy my long hair, and whenever I do one of those Q&A type things, I get bored and I'm just like, let's do a bit of question and answer. It's also great when I can't think of any fast bowling content myself, so let them do the thinking for me, and undoubtedly I'll have all my mates messaging me about, how to get the best haircut to bowl 145, how to grow rock star long hair.
Yeah,
Or I'll
yeah,
get them going, what are the best drills to bowl 145? Tell me the best drills. I know you're hiding them, which is, good fun. I find I have more people now bantering with me about, the best drills,
yeah,
and less
yeah,
people now asking me, what are the best drills to
yeah,
do this? What are the
yeah,
best drills to do that?
yeah.
Which I kind of find quite funny.
Well, maybe I ought to consider it. I'm only jealous, to be honest. I'm only jealous. I can't grow it like that. But there you go.
Oh, look, mine was having terrible hair at high school because went to a fancy private Catholic school, and so we had to have hair off the forehead, hair off the ears, hair off the collar, and
Right.
so you never really had a chance to kind of grow it out. And then as soon as I left high school, I grew it out maybe a bit shorter than this, but still pretty long. And then I cut it because I lost a bet when I was drunk against one of my friends. I was beating her at pool, and I very, very arrogantly said, "Watch this! I'll beat you in these next two shots, and I'll bet my hair on it." And of course, arrogance didn't
Yeah.
quite work out. And I watched her sit there and line because I was one ball up. I had just one left and the black ball, and I'd have won. And I thought I'd had it in the bag. But the determination as she lined up the next three hits and hit them all in, I couldn't believe it.
There
But
you go.
look,
There you
I
go.
learned that lesson. Hmm.
Well, I haven't gone all out bald yet, but I think I'm due at some point. But we'll see. My son,
Yeah.
who you've met, he's just
Hmm.
watching Room on a Broom. He's got a decent head of hair, so I'm hoping he doesn't take after me. But we'll see. Whereabouts are you?
Well,
You still in the Netherlands now?
no, I'm back in Germany now. So we came back last night. It was just
Okay.
a quick trip into Utrecht because my partner and I, we spent about 4 or 5 months there last year. And,
Right.
she was doing her Erasmus semester there. And I thought, well, whenever I come on this side of the world, I'll just join her wherever she is. But it's perfect because I didn't realize how close it was to Kampong. Like we were living in the southeast of Utrecht, which is literally,
Right.
it was about a 6 minute bike ride to get to
Yeah.
Kampong. And
Yeah.
so I reached out to them and said, "Hey, look, I'm here. Do you guys want a fast bowling coach?" And they just started some sort of academy. So it kind of worked out really well that I could assist them with their winter academy. And they let me use the facilities there as well whenever I was doing, I actually did
So,
get a couple of.
is the facility there in Utrecht the one? It's kind of open air, isn't it, with a roof?
Yeah,
Is that the one that you've been using then?
yeah,
Is it?
which is
They
perfect.
look decent. Yeah, look decent. And are you working alongside Roland?
Not there. No, that was I don't think he was there when I was there. Like
Okay.
I was there with hold on. I might have to edit this part because I'm drawing a blank on his name and I don't want to listen to it and feel like oh Sean, that's right. I do remember. It was Sean. So Sean did some stuff with the Lionesses maybe a few
Okay.
years ago, and he's done a bit of coaching
Right.
around the Netherlands. So he was
Yeah.
kind of
Okay.
he was
Okay.
managing the Winter Academy thing, and it was sort of good to work with them. They got some
Yeah.
talent.
Okay. Okay. I've just lost your picture, but it says it's still recording. So it says Stubbsy's internet is weak.
Oh, for fuck's sake! I
Okay,
had
man.
this
That's all right.
I had this same issue when I was in Melbourne too. I thought coming to the other side of the world, I do wonder if it's my computer or if it's actually I've just got crappy Wi-Fi wherever I seem to go. But look, I'm at my girlfriend's parents' house, so it should be somewhat decent. Hopefully, it pops up
Yeah.
again
What
soon.
you?
But
At least you got someone to blame if it all goes a bit tits
well,
up.
that's I've already got the excuses set up. I
Yeah.
wonder
No.
what'll
No.
happen
No.
if I.
Exactly.
Oh, look, I should be able to like if I share my screen because that's kind of the cool thing about doing it on the laptop because I did this with Simon in the kind of first one that I did. and
Yeah.
we could sort of
Yeah.
share the screen. And I thought that'd be kind of cool because people seem to enjoy fast bowling, obviously, but having two
Mm.
fast bowling coaches just share and chat and show some videos, I think people would
Mm.
kind of love. And I think there's a couple of bowls that I think are really, really interesting to discuss. And Josh was definitely one of them. And the thing that I kind of found the most interesting about his action, if I let me know if you can see this video.
Yeah.
It was this in his bowling arm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he's got the ball facing down, and as he kind of brings it through, it's this incredible kind of whiplash effect as he kind of comes over the top, which
Yeah.
I just loved. And I'm going to have people talking about the no bowl here, but we kind of need fast bowlers to bowl no balls so that the cameramen replay this footage so we can discuss it.
That's so no balls is the common thing. I mean, as you know, I put some stuff out on social media. I have
Yeah.
no idea where that's going, but I know it's going to be connected to whatever challenge I put in front of me next, just to kind of increase people's awareness. But it could be a really good example of a star position at front foot contact, a heel strike or whatever it is I'm emphasizing. But if it's a no ball, that's all people will focus on. It's interesting,
Yeah.
isn't it?
It's so annoying.
Yeah.
And I hate the idea of people because you get people that sort of they over focus on the no ball, and then they sort of won't take away anything else. But what I also find is that if you try to tell a fast bowler to stop bowling no balls, what you're doing to their process is you're going to create an incredibly negative effect. Because one, they're going to look down as they're running in. Two, the only way that they can sort of stop bowling no balls is to shorten their delivery stride because they're probably taking off now from the stumps as opposed to having an umpire there. And I did see, which I liked, a drill from a guy in Sydney, Ash Squires, I think. I just know him, Squirrel. But he put a second set of stumps behind the first set, which I thought was really quite smart. So instead of people taking off at the, past the stumps, then bowling 2 or 3 feet over, you've now got that extra set of stumps kind of behind the first set. And that seemed to stop people from bowling their balls. So that was a nice little thing you could do. But if you're telling bowlers to look down and then to shorten their delivery stride, you're going to really stuff them up.
Yeah. There's no balls are an interesting one because my belief is the best bowling groups in the world don't practice bad habits because then probability tells you that they're actually going to overstep in matches. If you train this way, and as you know, the mind is an amazing computer, and their spatial awareness will just find a way of getting them into exactly the same position in a match as they have been practicing. There are some bowlers that bowl no balls in training and they never bowl a no ball in matches, but even then, in my head, it's all about discipline, isn't it? And our point of difference for anybody is the way that we train, because we all train the same sort of amount. So what's the point of difference going to be? I've had some horrendous challenges with bowlers that constantly practice bowling no balls indoors all winter, and they take that kind of that spatial awareness with them when they start outdoors in kind of March, April sort of time. So yeah, any sort of drills, it's quite a simple thing to talk about, isn't it? But it's never quite as easy actually rectifying. So any sort of drills, any visual drills, anything that prevents them from looking down, I always kind of link that to when you're crossing a road. You know where the pavement is on the other side. You look down at the pavement and you reach for it. That's what we do. And I think that some bowlers do exactly that. So if they're looking down at the front line, they're reaching from the front line, as opposed to, can they keep their focus up here and just feel the kind of rhythm of their strides and things. But yeah, no balls is a bit of a bugbear of mine, but
Oh, look, if you can set it up at training and you've got the facilities to, I think, put an umpire in place or put something there that kind of gives them that takeoff point, and then, are there facilities that you guys use indoors? Do you guys have enough space for your run-ups?
No. So my work now is primarily to do with pathway. So
Mm.
it's the academy, the emerging player program for Surrey and below. So we use a George Abbott School in Guildford, which is a brilliant facility, but some of the bowlers can't fit their run-ups in. Some can. But I also believe, though, Stubbzy, that bowlers ought to be able to run in off any length run-up and find a stride to stay behind the line, because not every day is the same. You know, you're more fatigued one day. You've got hard ground, soft ground, you've got wind in your face, wind behind, wind on the side, you've got slopes, you've got all sorts of things. So I never actually believe that a run-up length is exactly the same. It's always marginally different. So I do believe that a run-up, as part of their skill, a bowler should be able to run in off any length run-up and still have the habit of staying behind the line. Obviously, if they can't fit their full run-up in, they're going to be bowling slower, but, you know, you kind of take advantage of that and work on other things, don't you?
Definitely.
But that's just one of my beliefs.
No, that's well thought out too, which I quite like. And I've always thought that, you know, you should have this awareness of where your front foot is without having to, you know, look down. Similar to, say, you know, as a batsman, you kind of know where the ball lands, and you could probably, you know, put some more intention to that. But I think as a bowler, without having to look down, if you sort of know when you're going to overstep, when you're going to be behind the line, at least within some sort of region, I think that's where you can probably find, I guess, that consistent run up where you are always behind. And it probably links in nicely into people saying, you know, how do you kind of find the question I'll get asked is, what's your perfect run up? But essentially, like, if you're nice and relaxed and you can kind of allow yourself to build up, well, you should kind of know roughly like how it feels when you know I'm a bit too quick here, or I'm coming in too slow, and then you start overstriding. And I think your awareness of these kinds of things means that you can then go and correct them as you're going through. Because, you know, I'm sure you've seen plenty of people who, when their run-ups aren't right, they'll probably start overstriding, potentially jump up higher, and then they'll probably get themselves into some pretty poor positions as they go through their delivery sequence. And all these things kind of tie in nicely.
No. I've started doing more and more work, and focus more and more on the run-ups than I ever have done before, because I now understand that how you enter the crease is everything about what you do through the crease. So working with running coaches, working with the S&C coach at Surrey and everywhere else that I've worked with, we've done a lot of like running technical drills as well. But you're right. I do think that in order for someone to feel what their right run-up is, they need that kind of bank of experience of feeling it before. So if club cricketers, for instance, they might play on a Saturday and Sunday, they might train once a week. For some bowlers, that'll be enough. They'll be able to tap into, this is what I do, this is how I run, how fast I run when I'm bowling well. But those players that cannot tap into that kind of feel, that kinesthetic feel of, this is what I do when I'm bowling well, they're the ones that, how do I find rhythm? How do I, how am I? What am I missing? What am I doing? Some bowlers will never feel rhythm because they don't bowl enough. So it's always quite an interesting one, that.
And I think that ties in well with the mindset too. Like, I do have some bowlers, and they talk to me and they ask questions that always come from, say, negative train of thought, like, I have a doubt, you know, or this isn't feeling good. And it's like, it's almost like your perception it's always on looking for a negative, or it's always on looking for what's going wrong. So it'd be very difficult for them to try to identify or even work optimistically or work positively to find the rhythm, because they're too busy kind of chasing their tail, finding things that go wrong, and then they focus on that, and then something else goes wrong, so you focus on that, and then something else goes wrong. And I found this with say supporting some bowlers online. One of the challenges I found was that if I analyze someone, I give them, say, a plan. There might be a drill or a cue in there. What will often happen is it starts as, say, one cue or one drill, but to kind of complete that, they'll break it down into, say, 2 or 3 things. So to try to do this, if I get these right, I'll do that, and then it goes for the more ori, and they'll break those two or three things
Yeah.
down into two or three more things. And so you have to kind of
Yeah.
catch that
Yeah.
early, because all of a sudden they've turned the thing that I want
Yeah.
them to do into 9 other things, and then moved so far away
Yeah.
from where we started. They've got to come
Yeah.
full circle.
Yeah. 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 I agree. Yeah, I mean, there's the mind. The mind is an amazing, complex thing, and and you would have come across some successful players. A part of their success is because they can control the mind, as opposed to the mind controlling them.
100%.
A lot of my sessions are reframing the way that the example you just gave there. It feels a bit crap. Okay, let's not talk about that, because I'll tell you what, your scene position's really good.
Yeah.
So let's practice tonight on, can you still be challenging to the batter when it feels a bit crap? Let's find a way of working with that. Let's I'm going to get some high speed footage of your seam position. You're hitting the seam, and actually you're nipping it about on the surface. So it's almost like, completely reframing the way that their mindset was in at the time, and even on your worst day, can you still perform? It's really interesting.
Yeah, well, Nasser Hussain said something that sort of really stuck with me. It's probably on some sort of a Sky Sports thing, but it was like, if you want to play for England, you have to have your best day every day. And I really enjoyed that. It's not saying you have to go out and take five for every game, but it's like you've always got to
Yeah,
try to find a way to bring your best out of yourself. And Matty Mason sort of
yeah,
talked about each ball's an individual event. That was where he kind of talked about it. And it's like, well, you've got all these events
yeah,
going on. You've got to find out a way to bring your best game to each one of those. Now, if you get whacked for six, you still got to come back and do your best for that ball. Hopefully, you can sort of have a think about why you got hit for six, because batsmen can be good too. So a good ball can go for six. In that case, you might want to
yeah,
do it again, or you might want to
yeah,
go, well, he's got me
yeah,
beat here. Let's change it up and go something different, as opposed to say, and I probably
yeah,
find this a lot more. I'm not sure if you find the same challenge or the same challenge with emotions, and say, if you do get whacked, it's difficult to let go of that previous, they'll call it failure. I call it like a learning opportunity, to then go into the next event and be like, all right, let's get back onto target and go, this is the plan, this is what I'm executing. There's probably a lot more plans
yeah,
when you get up to county and getting up to professional than what you have at, say, amateur level, where you try to cultivate a bit more thinking without trying to make it complex,
yeah,
but
yeah,
often
yeah.
not so much.
There's a lot of information available now.
Mm.
So the interesting thing is, there's a couple of things that you talked about, and it kind of resonated with me. One of the questions that I put to players is, the world speeds up when there's chaos. I've just been it for six. The ball before that, I was it for four. Blah blah blah. What's the one thing that I need to do right now? That's the question that needs to be asked. As long as the one, and it could be just bowl a length ball, because I know I can do that, and it still might go out the park. But that's, what's the one thing that I need to do that's in front of me right now. And it could be whatever it is, whatever it might be. And the other thing that you mentioned that resonated with me was, all players can do is do the best they can with what they've got and with what's in front of them. That's it. And more often than not, what we're asking bowlers to do in terms of execution, is coming away from technique. All we're asking bowlers to do is bowl something they're good at already.
Yeah.
We're not asking them, in the heat in the moment, I don't want you to bowl a back of the hand slower ball because you haven't spent the time practicing it. If you bowl it, and it's their decision, if you bowl it, it's a risk. All I'm asking you to do is, what you're good at, do the best you can in any situation with what you've got. If the best you can do is a wide Yorker, then do it, because you practiced it. But it is fascinating. I don't think that bowlers are expected to win matches these days. I mean, the grounds are small, the bats are massive. You could still bowl your best ball. You could bowl a brilliant Yorker and it could still go out the park.
Yeah.
You know, either behind the keeper or back over the bowler's head. So I tend to use that analogy. You're not expected to win matches. So do you know what? If you do, make the most of it. You know, if you get hit out the park, that's people are expecting that to happen. But if you don't, bloody make the most of it. You know, do you know what I mean? You know, it's like I did a session with Darren Goff a few years ago when I was at Surrey before. He came in and did a kind of a death bowling session with the Surrey players, and that's the story that he gave. You know, what made you so good, Darren? And he said, well, I never expected to win matches myself because it was always in the batter's favour. And if you go in with that confidence, knowing, okay, I'm just going to do the best I can here, I'm not expected to win. But if you go in with that belief and confidence, yeah, I've lost that game, but the batters are expected to win it, sort of thing. It just can give you a little bit of an edge. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely, and
it's quite an interesting one.
But I like that as that's a great kind of perspective to take any kind of perceived pressure off you, or you've almost like created a perspective where you can't even get any kind of perceived pressure because you've like it's just not your job. So you can kind of take your confidence in your skill set that you've practiced for years. It's, you know, and I mean, bowlers have bowled stock balls probably for the better part of 10 to 15 to 20 years. Like I do sometimes find it funny in the sense that, you know, we lose confidence in something that we have done probably tens of thousands of times, you know, and that's another thing that I like to kind of say, in that like you haven't even done the skill yet, because I do find that some bowlers like to think about what they're doing before they actually do it. It's like you can't think through something that needs to be acted, you know, that needs to be actually done, and then they go and do it and they come back and be like, oh yeah, that wasn't so bad. Or they come back and it was shit, but they can sort of figure out why it was shit and be like, oh great, now I can sort of go from there. But caught up in their own head where they're kind of really kind of stuffing things up. And that's where I do like those kind of perspective shifts. And I think they're quite wonderful to find something like that, like what Coffee was saying, to go, well, it'd be difficult to, you know, put yourself under pressure in that scenario. You're just doing your thing.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, it is quite, but you can tell in terms of body language, you can tell pretty much which way it's going to go from a posture point of view. You know, if the bowler, does he look tentative? Do they look relaxed? You can pretty much, it's like a footballer taking penalties. You can tell really, can't you, with the way that they're walking up to take the penalty. And I think the same is true. You know, a bowler trying to defend 10 runs off the last last over of a T20. You know, if the first ball goes for a boundary, you just watch them closely. They won't know they're doing it, but you know, perception is projection. Whatever they are feeling inside, they will be showing signs of that, the way they are feeling, to everyone in the ground. So there's something else that you said there a minute ago as well. I can't remember. It'll come back to me.
But I liked how you were sort of saying about projecting outward. And I think that there are ways you can kind of, you might say, hack your nervous system, so to speak, if you are getting a bit more, you know, sympathetic, in the sense that it's, you know, quite fight or flight. You've got the adrenaline, you've got the cortisol, you've got all that running wild, to get yourself a bit more parasympathetic, a bit more restful, etc. To, you know, use some breathing techniques, or usually what happens when you are quite stressed, the shoulder starts to rise, you start to kind of tense up, so you can kind of start to do a bit of progressive muscle relaxation. My favorite one that I learned was, you know, relaxing the tongue from the roof of your mouth, which, you know, usually sits up there. And all of a sudden you kind of feel a sense of relaxation, just breathing slowly through your nose. And, you know, I remember actually making a point to coach relaxation. And you can do that really well through a lot of running mechanics drills, where you see guys do running mechanics and they're really kind of bolt stiff. And I used to coach it like that back in the day, until I had a bit of a renaissance and just thought, the positions are kind of there, but the way that they're moving into them does not look good. and they're creating so much unnecessary tension that they just don't need. And any 100-meter runner, like you look at them at the start of a race, or even when they're running, I've got some footage of Usain Bolt going, and his shoulders are kind of bouncing up and down as he's sprinting at top end speed. Like they ain't stiff, where he's just, and sort of putting this into some of those running mechanics drills, it kind of gave them a sense of what it's like to be relaxed and move. Because, you tell people relax, but it's almost like telling people to calm down. It just makes them harder because they don't really know how to kind of relax, or they've never trained themselves.
I do. I like the breathing out, the tongue in the roof of the mouth. I've not heard that before. That's an interesting one. But whenever me or the S&C are doing running mechanics drills, I make sure the bowlers always have a ball in their hand, so they make that connection between this is me running, practicing my mechanics, but actually they got a ball in their hand as well. So I mean, on average, you would know this already. On average, a fast bowler's run up average length of 20 meters, some more, some less. Average running speed is 20 plus kilometers an hour. Those are the best. So how often do bowlers practice at that sort of intensity, do you know what, and still in a relaxed kind of way with their arms and their legs?
If we were to say to a performer, if you were to act as if you cannot fail,
I like that.
How would that change or shift what you think about, what you see, and your body language? How you cannot fail. So, that's quite a nice little question to ask every now and then. And then the other thing that I was going to say, just on a slightly different. We'll come on to it, cues and things like that.
But I love the question. I mean, one of the things that I kind of had written down as a thing to kind of run by you was something that I kind of made me think when I was talking with Matt, and he was sort of talking about his, you might say, relationships with the players and how he would communicate to them that we could do something with your technique to kind of improve you, because at that level it's probably quite different. You might get a bit more pushback, and I thought it was quite interesting how with someone like AJ Ty, who was a bit more resistant to it, he'd sort of go like, look, I've got this plan, it's here if you kind of want it. And he'd sort of go through the route of, say, asking questions was, if you could gain an extra 5 or 10 Ks, how would that change your performance? And I like this idea of the questions that you've got, because I love the overall perspective or philosophy of just asking the right questions. And the big thing that I think I kind of came to was like, people just don't know enough to ask the right questions. And that's where I sort of saw my responsibility as a Instagram coach, etc., to hopefully put some stuff out there in as much context as possible so that people can ask better questions.
Yeah, I agree. What you need in order to ask the right question? Well, I don't really know. You kind of do what we're doing, I guess. You kind of, well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, I've messed up so many times, and I've given my opinion as opposed to, and sometimes you still need to do that, but it's always worth trying to get whatever message is you are trying to give, getting that from the players. I mean, one of the questions, if you had that time again, depending on what happened in the performance, if you were given the same situation again, what would you do differently, if anything? It's quite a nice one to, okay, well, we ended up winning the game. Could we have won the game differently? If we could have won the game differently, what might that look like? And then I like those, what do they call it? Pregnant pauses. You ask a question and then just go quiet and just wait for a response. Because a lot of players, I don't know your experience of like performance reviews and stuff in the change room or on the outfield afterwards. Players often, unless it's set up in the right way, players often you don't get a lot back from them. So yeah, asking the right question, I think, is really important, particularly if it's just more powerful if it comes from them, isn't it?
And I think it is interesting how you kind of phrase that, because it is quite tricky if you've got emotions, and I'd use this in a broader context of life, or say with some of my friends who are in relationships. And, I love the saying, like, we're on the same team here. We're working together against the problem. But what you often find is that, and you probably find this more with, say, your wife or your partner, is that, like, if you're in a discussion and there's emotions, often you stop discussing the point that you want to discuss and instead discuss the emotions. So the same thing would probably hold true in any context where someone could be resistive, and then the emotions, probably going to start to make it difficult to really dig into some challenging substance matter. But I think that's kind of where, like, I've probably found for myself, like, almost, being a nice, calm, happy, but, no sense of negativity or criticisms or anything that I do say is almost exciting. And I tell my guys as well, like, I don't care when you take a fifer. Like, what am I going to say? Good stuff. Do it again. I love it when you come to me and you say, I got absolutely smashed on the weekend, and I try and create this environments of that's brilliant, that's wonderful, cool. Like, for me, it's great. I've got something to do now. Why? What happened?
Hopefully. I always quite like giving them. I don't do it all the time, but if I feel is relevant, giving them a real life story about me. So if somebody has, gone the distance in the last over, I'll say, yeah, that's all right, it happens. And then I will give them an example of how I've gone the distance in the last over, particularly if it's a high profile game. I remember playing in a national club final at Lord's for Bath Cricket Club, and I was tasked with bowling the last over, which went for 15, and we ended up losing by like 2 runs or something like that. So I quite like. I think it's important for if we're really going to get to the meat of how we could make a positive difference with people. People need to be comfortable being vulnerable, and if they can see me being equally okay with being vulnerable and talking to them about the emotion of walking off the field at Lord's, having just gone for 15, and then the emotion of having to watch the opponents lifting the cup at the end of the game, I kind of you make that kind of connection, because without trust, there's a ceiling, I think, to the impact that we can have. But if we can burst through, and that so they can trust us, whatever that looks like, all of a sudden we got something to work with, and it becomes a little bit more than surface level stuff. It becomes a bit deeper.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the things that I found with my coaching across the years. Like, when I first started doing some fast bowling coaching, it was very technical. As in, I had this, you might say, overall philosophy that you were coming to me to become a better cricketer, and my way of approaching that was to improve your technique, which essentially kind of looked like, I'll give you a straighter front leg and that'll make you a better fast bowler. And then I think the more I kind of learned, like, I started thinking a lot about a better fast bowler. Like, that needs to be the axiom, so to speak. And a lot of people like to focus on speed. It's like, I'll make you a faster bowler and that'll make you a better fast bowler. But if you put speed above on the hierarchy, I often find that you run into challenge where, because you're prioritizing, say, speed, other things can sort of go, well, we can't focus on other areas because you put speed first. And then I kind of, I always enjoyed sort of getting to know people. And, when I was working as an S&C, had a lot more female clients, and they really kind of open up a lot more, and probably realized that the most important role that I can probably play isn't so much as, say, a coach who's going to coach a technique, but much more as, say, a mentor, where I'm essentially just here to be on your side, and I can kind of help you grow as a person. Because if I could say support you in becoming a bit more secure in yourself when you've got these vulnerable times, and often when people are afraid of failure, they'll find a way to talk themselves out of the fact that they've failed. So they'll never be able to learn because it's somebody else's fault, or it was only happened because of this, etc., etc. And so they can never face the actual learning thing. And so how are they ever supposed to say get better in the future when they don't even know what they're supposed to be learning from? They've just managed to talk themselves out of it. And that's where I think being that online mentor, say with the guys in person, it's probably been one of the most important things I've done, is to coach them on that side and support them on that side.
It's an interesting subject, all of this, because if somebody comes to you and say, I want to become a better fast bowler, well, what does better look like? Because it's not always speed. I mean, I'm all over TikTok at the moment, and I'm constantly getting like comments about, I'm 70 mile an hour. How do I become 80? And that's fine, because we can come up with some technical stuff.
Yeah.
We can come up with run up speeds. Of course we can. We can do all of that. But there's always a cost benefit as well, isn't there? So you mentioned front leg earlier on. So if anybody sends me a video of them from side on and their front leg bends, we all know what the consequences of that is. But if that bowler is bloody accurate and hits the seam, yeah, we can make you quicker. But it will mean, if you want to brace front leg or whatever it might be, you won't be the same bowler. So you might not be as accurate. You might not hit the seam quite as much. You know what I mean? So it's always everyone wants to become faster, and that's fine. It's keeping me and you in a job.
That's true.
But at the same time, there needs to be a real understanding that any technical change, there is a cost benefit attached to that as well, which a lot of people don't grasp hold of that concept. They much prefer bowling quicker and going at 10 runs per over than the less sexy bowler of 70 mile an hour that bowls maidens for fun.
Yeah, which is where I think people's perspectives on what will make them a better cricketer are just a bit skewed, and it comes back into the fact that they don't know how to ask themselves the right questions. They think that if I improve this one thing, or if I just do this one drill, it'll make me the best cricketer, and they lose sight of any kind of overall context and reduce it down into just a couple of variables and think that that's going to be it. Which is, when you get those general questions too, because I always get them when people ask me questions on that Q&A thing. It's like someone asked before a workout for a fast bowler. I'm like, I've got 15 seconds to say something. Like, how am I supposed to, discuss what you're supposed to do as a fast bowler from a physical side in just 15 seconds? Like, I can't. Yeah. Or, when people, how do you bowl faster? Or which answer do you want? You could sort of list off what's put in research. But, me and Feltz have had sort of chats about, some bowlers just running too fast. So sometimes it might not even be fair to give the general type answer, like those 4, technical components that research has shown make a ball faster. Because they might try and do it and stuff themselves up. Yeah. Just run them.
Yeah. It is an interesting one, because adrenaline. If somebody, for whatever reason, the match situation or the opponent, if they get angry, then all of a sudden, generally, people tend to run in quicker, and they don't care about their technique, but they generally then just run in and bowl faster as well. So one of the questions is, well, okay, I want to bowl faster. Well, how fast are you at the minute? Do you have an intent to bowl fast? Do you mean what you're doing? One of the kind of measures, so I'm going through some pace profiling sessions, age group pace profiling sessions at Surrey at the moment. And there's a few kind of things when I'm reporting on each bowler. How far do they follow through down the wicket? Because it tells you quite a lot about, are they trying to bowl fast? Through the crease from back foot to front foot, what am I seeing? it's often something that I can't describe, but am I seeing a real kind of intent to get through the crease and at the batter in their follow through? So, I mean, sometimes we can't describe what it is we're looking for. We know a lot about what fast bowling looks like, of course we do, but the pace bowling profiling sessions are an interesting one. And now my focus is slightly different. I've spent a good number of years at a kind of senior level where having an awareness of technique, but it's more about just winning the game.
Yeah.
You know, how do we get the ball to reverse if that's important? How do we close off one half of the field if we need to defend the last 3 balls of the over? But now I'm in a position where the focus is laying the technical foundations from 10 up to 13, getting them to run well, getting them to run in a straight line, good posture at back foot contact, good posture at front foot contact, follow through at the target, and also work with them on a decent seam position. And then from 14 upwards, if they've got those in place, 14 upwards, we then can start introducing craft, you know, cantering the seam, working a batter out and all this kind of stuff. So it's quite an interesting time for me at the moment. It is a new job, but it's a new focus as well, which keeps things fresh for me.
Yeah, I like that. And I suppose as a more private coach, like I don't have the same, I'd say, elite level kind of bowlers coming to me. Some, sometimes DM you and ask questions, etc. But it is much more sort of focused on their limiting factors. A lot of the times, technique, mindset, I think is always one, and and then the physical side as well is something that some bowlers say, how can I bowl faster? And it doesn't take much to have a look at them and go, well, physically speaking, I'd be surprised if she could bowl fast. So if we sort of put some time into that, but no one probably wants to hear that you've got a good 3 to 6 to 9 months of putting in some consistent progressive process together to get yourself into a position where you're now allowed to ask me that question. And I'm sure you'll get something out of it as well.
Yeah.
But, I'll get some people that all they'll do is gym stuff. Their squat and deadlift will be really, really high. But when you tell them, well, have you done much running mechanics work? Have you done much kind of running? Oh, not really. I'd be lucky if they could run around the oval. It's quite interesting. But I have found that quite fun. And I think it's interesting now to listen to how you've gone about approaching it, or some of the changes that you've found from, say, coaching at that level and now bringing it back down to here. Because I remember having a chat with Aaron Kellett, who was the SNC with Cricket Australia, and I think some of the questions that I had, he just probably couldn't, you might say, appropriately answer, just because the athletes that I might deal with versus the athletes that he gets, his athletes have already been in elite level training environments for years. They come to him elite, whereas I get guys that can't move. It's quite interesting hearing about how someone's coaching is at different levels.
Yeah, it's. I've been very fortunate in my kind of the last 20 years. I've periodically found myself in slightly different kind of roles, so effectively it's a new job, so it keeps things fresh and open for me. We've just rolled out, so as part of the role that I'm doing here, we've just rolled out some very simple running technical drills from the S&C coach at Surrey. And we've rolled out some very simple, basic bowling drills, which all the Surrey age groups will be doing every match day and every training day as well. So all of us, we're just kind of chipping away with getting bowlers to run efficiently, run in a straight line. And if you've had a conversation with Feltz, you were saying earlier, or Paul Felton, I really enjoy my chats with him. In fact, I was on the phone with him yesterday, just chewing the fat on stuff, not just fast bowling, but you would already know that one of the common issues with injuries and bowlers is that one, they don't run efficiently, and two, there's changes of direction, which is why with that knowledge, okay, I need, in order for me to develop a conveyor belt of fast bowlers that Surrey, Alex Stewart, Gareth Batty, and all the other kind of selectors into the professional level at Surrey, in order for them to have the option of signing, they don't have to sign. And in order for me to supply a conveyor belt of fast bowlers, it needs to start kind of 10, 11, 12, 13. It has to, and it all takes kind of time and things. But we've rolled out some very simple, basic stuff that so far all the coaches have kind of bought into. So there's going to be some real consistency across the board, which is great.
That's wonderful, and I think it's great to probably have the ability to see some of these guys at those age groups, and then monitor their process across the years. That's probably one of the few things that having only been in the industry for probably 4 or something years, and most of that I've spent, abroad. So it's kind of been a bit more online stuff and being able to do the hands-on kind of coaching. Is that I just haven't had a chance to say take a kid from young and see him go all the way through. I think the longest client I've had is 2.5 years, just kind of consistently invested across that time. And one of them ended up playing a County Twos game, which is nice, and the other one, well, he's injured at the moment, so potentially something to look at there. But I think that's one thing that I'm kind of looking forward to in the future is probably hopefully settling down somewhere and being able to take someone through that kind of process.
But it's quite nice tracking players through, isn't it? So we're now in a position where if somebody gets signed as a professional and bowls 85 mile an hour, we, having tracked that bowler through from their age groups, we kind of have some sort of idea of kind of ball speed thresholds. We've got an idea, and that's all it is, and there's no guarantees with anything. We've got an idea of what a professional bowler who bowls 85 mile an hour, what that looks like at 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and there's pace thresholds. And that's not to say that if a bowler doesn't sit within the threshold at 15, that they won't punch through, because everybody develops physically, mentally, technically at different stages. But we kind of got an idea. So going back to the guy that you've worked with for over 2 years, I bet it's nice to kind of track where they're going. Where are you? How's your technique now compared with 2 years ago? What's your ball speeds like compared with? And it's quite a powerful kind of bit of information for them to see as well, eh?
Oh, definitely. And I think as well, just for myself, to think about some of the coaching methods or drills that I've used across the time and thought about, that was a pretty shit drill. Or, I wish I hadn't done that because that caused this. And that is one of the challenges working online, is that I don't always get to see in real time what they're doing. But having said that, if you don't have access to coaching, then online's always going to be the way to go. But I think as well, just in how I communicate a message, nowadays I find like some of the cues that I've sort of put together can sort of capture a lot more and requires a lot less, you might say, coaching. Like one of the things that I kind of like with the front leg is I sort of use the term oppositional synergy because I really enjoy the term synergy, but it sort of made sense to go, well, if you want to use the front leg and you want to brace, but what's it supposed to do? Like if you just land it there and it's straight, but doesn't really do anything in how your body's going to produce power, then it might look good, but it won't actually give you anything. But if you can use your front leg to kind of pull the opposite leg through, so you've got both legs kind of working together, well, it's very difficult to do that with the front leg bending, because you've got the front leg going that way, but you want the rear leg to go that way. So you kind of need them opposing each other. And they can, you might take that away and kind of have a play with it. Like, all right, I can sort of see how that's doing something. The recent one that I've kind of enjoyed is it's kind of getting into your hip. So if it's a right-hand bowler, I really want you to get into that left hip, and you can sort of link it with the right shoulder. Like if I can get into the left hip and bring that forwards, and then you look at some of their head positions, and it's even just seeing them doing walkthroughs. Like you see some guys, I'll step back for a second, and they'll drill this. You can just see them throwing their head off that way straight away. Yeah, and it's really quite interesting to think about. It's so simple, but you can even see when they're doing their walkthroughs, they're throwing themselves into poor positions. But when you see them get into that left hip, it's kind of hard to do with a bent knee. So it sort of gives them a feeling, and then I can hopefully try to coach the straight front leg, or coach the delivery sequence, I might call it, without having to, make them think about or focus on the front leg.
Yeah.
Because if they do that, they're not thinking about the other side of the body that works with it.
Yeah, I got you. So the interesting thing there is, if you got a bowler that bends their front knee, but then literally cannot just extend that delivery stride a little bit in order to land with a straight leg and then pivot over. The question is, if we were able to strengthen glutes, quads, hamstrings, calves, everything around the knee to prevent the knee angle from changing, in my head, that becomes a straight leg. So there was a guy I used to work with, Anthony Ireland, at Gloucestershire, and it was during a period where, my opinion, we got the most bowling bonus points over the season. We had a bloody good bowling attack, and Anthony Ireland was different because he bowled in swing, and his front leg bent, but it made him the bowler that he was. So we tried for a period of time to see if he could bowl quicker. He used to absolutely steam in. He was a front honour, so back foot pointing straight down, so he could afford to steam in. But there was a period of time where, can we make this guy quicker? Because he was losing energy. He couldn't do it. So therefore, we then just focused on strengthening that left leg. Whether he actually made him quicker or not, I don't know. But it's so a leg that doesn't bend, does that, and it's a question because I don't know what the answer is. Does that then equate to a straight front leg? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
If somebody literally cannot get into that position.
And it's interesting kind of having these kind of contextual chats, because, that's where there's so much stuff that kind of goes into it. And then there's always the question, it's like, if that does make you who you are as a bowler, then we probably don't want to change that. And I think in my role, I just don't have to have that kind of a question as much, because I'm not coaching guys who have been good enough to make it to that professional level. So at the end of the day, I could literally chop and change everything, and you're still an amateur bowler. So for the guys that say are at that pro level, it is probably a bit more of a conversation to have, like, well, you had this and it got you to that level. So now obviously we do want to keep improving it. And I think even if I was at that level, I'd still have that same philosophy where we're continuously looking for ways to get better, but which things you might pick and choose, because I think there's plenty that you can sort of do, even with the front leg bending, about trying to get more out of the upper body. And I probably started coaching a bit more around how your body moves to be powerful, as opposed to, say, positions. Say with the front arm, I wouldn't say put the front arm up there or put the front arm out there. I'd more sort of explain that, like, you've got the front side of the body, front arm linked to your front shoulder, and you got the bowling side, right shoulder linked to your right arm. And, if you can sort of keep it somewhat relaxed, so you're not going to be a stiff mover. But if I can use that to kind of get forward and then rip it back in, I'm going to get some power there, where I've got the front side, giving me this nice, separation as I start to bring myself across. And I can use this to really pull the whole side back at the same time. That'll bring the bowling shoulder through. And that's going to be quite powerful, because you might see people that the way that they move is they almost like pull this in without linking it to what you want the torso to do. So it just gets stuck there. So they have to go in the side flexion to get some sort of clearance. And then they're going to have no power to sort of slam that down over the top with some sort of, if I can rotate this nicely, that I can use all that energy to bowl. And I find the guys that do bowl quite slowly, they actually can't put energy in until this point here. And that's the only point they can sort of bowl fast. And it's funny when I tell them to try to bowl fast, I'll just see, like, what do you do when I say, just try to bowl as fast as you can? They don't have a way to do it. They just can't get into it. Actually, I'll show you. There's a video that I took of someone doing a 500,000 bowling drill, because this kind of nicely showed it for me. Where was it?
We'll come back to that Josh Little footage
yes,
in a
we
minute.
should. So it was this one. And I thought this was just watching the way that he kind of moves. So he comes straight back here, where he's almost like short lever and side on too early. So then when he lengthens his arms, his body's not moving. Like you watch that there, his arms moving independent of his torso. So now he's almost back to say he's rotated himself, but he's stopped the movement. So there's no kind of stretch shortening kind of reflex and then from here, well, the front arm's he's just tilting the side flexion, and then it sort of comes around, and that's just slow. Yeah,
well, even that posture there, that tells you what's going to happen when he's actually standing up. Yeah, the correlation, the relationship between left arm and right arm. I mean, it's a coordinated set of movements, isn't it? Some people get it easier than others. A lot of front arms stay long, so it becomes a dead weight, and it drags them that way. Takes them offline with a target. I've not used a lot of those drills. I know that Stephen Jones does a lot of that, doesn't he? It's isolating the top half. I guess it's whatever works. If it's a drill that gives that individual the opportunity of feeling what it's like to engage that front arm on that occasion, then it's the right drill to do. No, interesting.
Yeah, well, I did find that was an interesting one, because I had a few bowlers like that. They just didn't really know how to use their upper body to bowl quick, and so that was one of the drills I used to kind of try to get them into the position. But one of the other cues that I kind of found that worked really well from an alignment sense was having your head inside the front foot. And you probably see bowls that are coming over here, like the hips are going to shoot that way, the head and the upper body's going to go that way. So I kind of had this kind of series of cues where I wanted to get them into their left hip. That was sort of one of the important ones, with their head on the inside of their front foot. So that kind of had their energy going down. That would get them there. The way that they're using their upper body, timing it so that when it comes out and goes back in, it's almost like when you're throwing. You get this nice lengthen out and bang as you go through, as opposed to creating this energy and then losing it, and then coming back in inefficiently, and then having no ability to kind of put a ball quickly. Yeah. But it seemed to work in the short time that I had these guys for, which was cool.
I remember, so the simple analogy that I enjoy using is if a bowler can run in, bowl the ball through the crease and follow through towards a target, all within a body width corridor, you're not going to be too far wrong. So what you've just talked through there is exactly that, isn't it? Getting into your left hip, grabbing the batter's grill and ripping it into your left hip to make sure you stay upright. All of the things that we're talking about is, can the bowler do it within a body width corridor? Because if they can, that will give them the line. So yeah, I mean, I do quite enjoy forcing. Well, not less so now, but I've forced bowlers into those positions by putting constraints in, poles, walls, nets, all that kind of stuff, to give them the opportunity of feeling what it's like. But invariably, I mean, all we're looking at really is improving players by 0.5% every week. That's all we're looking for. It's not massive changes, and then you add all those up over a year. But I quite like cues. Another cue I quite like at back foot contact, if I'm looking to get them more upright, is, can you squeeze your shoulder blades together at back foot contact? Squeeze your shoulder blades together, and some bowlers get it, and then all of a sudden their posture at back foot contact is good, which then enables them to get off that quickly to front foot contact. But cues are quite good. I wrote something down earlier on just about going back to the run up, is run like you're running in long grass.
Gets the feet up and over nicely.
Well, it gets your knee lift up, and then you're looking for that foot strike underneath your chin, aren't you, to keep you moving forwards?
Yeah.
Run like you're running through water or something like that. But yeah, it's all interesting stuff. Anyway, let's go back to Josh Little.
Yeah, where was the video? Share. Because this
'Cause
was
I
a
know
really
that well, you said to me that you were watching this series, which we ended up losing. But yeah, so there's only one other bowler that I've worked with that has a bowling arm like that, and the other one was Jade Dernbach.
Right. Okay.
So keeping their fingers, it's a real late turn, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a real late
so
turn. Yeah.
Talk
So
to there.
well, it's elbow. Look at the black kind of strapping thing he's got on his elbow. He had for a period of time an elbow problem, simply because it was such a late turn. So then you've got arm rotation to get, and then you've got. I mean, he's bowling like 80 odd mile an hour, and he bends his front leg. Look, but he's got arm rotation and everything in a very small window to get his fingers behind the ball. Jade Dernbach was exactly the same. So I believe it does give you pace, turning late. It does give you pace, but the consequence is you've got to make sure that your elbow, ligaments, joints, everything like that are warm, flexible, and everything. It's almost like hyperextension.
Yeah, like I wonder if we could sort of see it on one of these. You can sort of see it whip through here really nicely. But another one that I saw, Carl Crowe gave me some footage a while back, and I had a bit of a look through. And one of them was from Zishan Samir, a Pakistani bowler, and watching his see that there. So this is kind of where like I thought about the front arm and how I reckon someone would have coached him out of this, where he's just so relaxed with both his bowling arm and his front arm, where he almost like he whips it out with the hand open and just kind of catches it as it's sort of flapping through. But his bowling arm here, as it kind of comes over, that whip is just ridiculous. Yeah. And this is
he
kind
quick?
Of, you know, I think so. I'm pretty sure he bowls around 140. So I might have to confirm that for you, because he played in the PSL and he played in the Pakistan under-19 World Cup team. You know, and he also gets a really nice delivery sequence as well, which is kind of cool. But those kind of two bowlers, like Josh Little and say him, sort of, for me, that was where they're just so relaxed. They can leverage the most out of their bowling arm. And I think cueing someone to point the ball down, I think that probably wouldn't work very well, because if you are tensed, you're just gonna kind of like, you need to be relaxed so you can move quickly to be able to get the ball to face forwards and then release it as late as possible, so that the wrist is also pointing forwards, where I know I have an issue where I might release it not as far forwards as I might like, and so I've still got the inside part of my palm facing forwards, and you kind of roll down the side of it to try to find some time, so to speak. But I just being so relaxed, it just looked like so much whip through the arm.
I don't think you can coach that. I think that's a natural thing.
And people
so if somebody tries to coach it, then it could have all sorts of, well, it could be positive or it could be negative, but I always think if somebody does something naturally, look to work with it. Before you kind of go the other way and try and change it. Even, I mean, I was working with Josh for a year. I never mentioned what his elbow or that late turn. I didn't want him to be aware of it. I didn't want him to understand it. I want to become clear in my mind how we could use it. And how we could use it is we worked a lot on reverse swing, bowling, death, at the same time, we also did some work on how he's going to swing the new ball. So it was all about feel at the hand with a new ball, and then feel without me saying anything. He preferred going around the wicket to a right-hander bowling at death because he quite liked that angle to get a Yorker in. We didn't mention anything about his release point, but his release point for a Yorker, like many other really good like Yorker bowlers, was lower. So we talked a lot on his run-up alignment and how his run-up alignment can help him get the ball in the hole by dropping his arm, and how his run-up alignment can help him swing the ball conventionally with a new ball. But he's a bloody natural player, and I didn't want to complicate things.
I think that's where we can have a chat here and talk about some sort of technical stuff that in the conversations that we might have with fast bowlers, you'd never really sort of bring it up. And I remember having a similar chat with Matt around, what sorts of things, how into the nitty-gritty do you kind of say? Most coaches will probably say, like, not really a whole lot. I do have some bowlers who, they like to think and they like to say overthink as well. So giving them, I guess, enough of information that it kind of makes sense in their own head to get that same buy-in, because if they can't understand it, they'll find a way to think their way out of it too quickly. Or they'll do the thing where you give them the plan and they'll turn the plan into 3 different things. And then when they can't get that right, they'll turn it into 3 more things. Then you've got a mess.
Yeah. So some players think they like a lot of detail. So what are our options as coaches? Okay, if you like a lot of detail, can you, in this session right now, can you bowl me a Yorker? Can you bowl me a ball that would hit the batter on the knee roll? Because then you bring it right back to its simple focus. All this detail may or may not be important, but at the end of the day, is the detail that you think you need impacting on the very simple skill of bowling a ball and hitting the stumps, because you're so focused on how wide you want to be on the crease, or what your front arm's doing, or what the batter's toe of the bat is doing. Are you so focused on so many things that actually doesn't matter? So some players quite like that, and we've all worked with them. How I personally tend now to work with those sort of guys is, I say less. I say less and just kind of observe more and just see, because are they performing well? And if they're not performing well, are they talking about their performance, or are they talking about the footholes, or the wet outfield, or the wet ball, or something like that? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think I became a better coach when I said less anyway, to be honest. So
yeah, and that's been a common trend, I think, for most coaches I've spoken to who've sort of been around a bit. And it's definitely something that I know when I was younger. Like, I suppose every coach kind of goes through it, where you feel you need to justify your position as a coach. Yeah. And there probably might be an insecurity on the coach's side as well, which you probably get over when you start to get some more buy-in, you start to get some results, and you realise that, it is a results-based industry. If I'm seeing improvement, that's all that matters, not the conversation around the improvement. Or I don't know, if you're a coach that likes credit, to make sure the bowler knows that it's, it's your coaching that's done it, or something like that. And I think that is one of the things that probably started to come across. But I've also used the explanation to overthinkers, is that it's not necessarily a bad thing. You just need to be aware, or put your overthinking mind into good areas. If you like to think, put it into something constructive, and have, you might say, checkpoints where if you catch yourself going into, say, a rabbit hole, or going into an area where there's just nothing useful there, you've got to bring yourself out of it pretty quick. And hopefully it gives them some sort of a framework to put their brain into better areas. Or this is probably where as well, you just need to get yourself out of cricket.
So the interesting thing is, you know, if somebody performs really well, I'm particularly interested in what am I seeing, hearing, when a bowler performs really well, because that's the kind of template that we're trying to get them to on a consistent basis. So if somebody performs really well and I ask them the question, well, what were you thinking about? Invariably, they say nothing. I wasn't thinking about anything. So how can we then get them to that place where they're thinking about nothing every time they go out and perform? So it's almost like they got two heads. One is a training stroke practice head, where they talk about all sorts of stuff that really doesn't matter, and then they've got a performance head, where if they're not careful, they go down the rabbit hole of thinking a lot of detail, but actually when they perform really well, they're not thinking about anything. Yeah, no, interesting. I'm gonna have to shoot in a minute, but we've got somebody coming round. I've got to exchange some baby seats. We've got people helping out and all sorts of stuff, but I'm gonna have to shoot in a minute.
No stress. Oh, look, we can leave it here for now. That was I think we covered off some good stuff in a short amount of time. I mean, having said that, it was funny when you said that you didn't have it prepared, because I just had the video with Josh, and then as I was going through my phone thinking, oh, what else would be fun to share? I think I came out with about 7 or 8 more things, and it's just kind of amazing how much you could sort of dig into it, or like where else you could sort of dig into it. But I think in a few more months, when the new one's here and you're settled and things have kind of gone back to normal, we'll have to pick up where we left off and have round 2.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things we spoke about before was how I'm learning what the considerations are for bowlers who are going through peak height velocity, so growth spurts. So the considerations there, but I don't know enough about it yet to talk about it with confidence. I've already learned a fair amount, but it'll be my job then to kind of to coach other coaches about these considerations, because but it is very relevant to my role currently.
And I think one of the most interesting things with, say, peak height velocity is that as a coach, it's being much more proactive, in the sense that a bowler probably isn't going to come to you being like, oh, my back's feeling a bit stiff, or I'm feeling a bit sore. Like, you're proactively managing the workloads and what they're doing to make sure that nothing happens in the future. Whereas I think a lot of the time with injuries and stuff like that, it is so much more reactive. And I think this is where it's interesting to think that, I can't remember the research myself, but it's like 1 to 2 years after peak height velocity, this is when they are more susceptible. So you're looking at being proactive in reducing or managing what they're doing if they are growing from their spine. But they aren't injured. So it could be kind of an interesting kind of conversation, or an interesting kind of thing to have, where you're going, look, you're in a category where things could potentially go wrong. So we want to be smart and mitigate any kind of potential risk of what could happen, versus...
So, Sorry. So when do we need bowlers to be ready? It's not at like 13 to 15. Although their kind of age group coaches might think that that's the case, but it's not the case at all. I'd say the guy that's done a lot of work on this is a guy called James Orway.
Is it Pete Orway?
The Pathway S&C.
Or is it?
No, James Orway, okay. S&C coach down at Pathway S&C coach at Somerset, and he has been the one that has looked into it. He might have even done a kind of a degree or a master's. I might be completely wrong on that. What I've already learned is, okay, we're in control of when bowlers rock up, we're going to take their heights. We're going to see if they've grown, but then we're going to take their leg length and we're going to take their torso length. So if they've grown, is it their legs or their torso? Because if it's their legs, we don't need to do anything. We don't need to change anything, so they still bowl. But if it's their torso, then they can still bowl, but at a reduced intensity. Because, and I've got some, I've got a 15-year-old under 15 that I I like a lot because ball speeds are up there. He's tall. He's clearly going through a growth spurt, but he's playing like four or 5 days a week.
Crazy.
And I'm like, fuck, yeah. But people don't know. You see, they just don't know. They don't know this information. So, but we can. But James Allway might be somebody that you want to have a conversation with at some point.
You might
if
have mentioned
he's
him
willing to kind of.
when you said you had a chat with Feltz, and there was another person as well who was a bit of a cricket nuffy and was interested in this side of things. Because I remember you touching on that a couple of weeks back when you said you were about to have a chat with Feltz, and this was something that had sort of come up, which I thought was really interesting. And much needed.
Yeah, Feltz is an interesting one. Always is. I mean, I'm always learning. Every time I have a conversation with him, and he keeps things simple. He keeps it in coach's language as opposed to scientific language, isn't it?
I wonder if that was all from Shiny. You know, when they were first starting their relationship, and you've got a biomechanist that kind of had to learn the language bit.
Yeah, I've been so fortunate. I mean, Shiny was a mentor for me. I mean, I was academy director at Gloucestershire years ago. He was academy director at Somerset, but we had this thing together, this passion for fast bowling. He was much further down the line than I was. But I spent so much time with Shiny, just talking about stuff, coming up with, and just watching him with these drills that he used to come up with, and heading down to Taunton and just like being there, listening to how he coached but the bowlers down at Taunton. And then he obviously went up and worked with the ECB. I've been so fortunate to have somebody like him. And if I certainly got something, a lot from Shiny, then Feltz, having worked alongside him for a good number of years, I've no doubt that would have rubbed off on him as well.
Yeah, he's been a great network. But look, if you've got to shoot off, we can finish up here.